So our original plan was to talk about the Super Bowl ads and how they integrated with social media, but let's cut to the chase. They really didn't. This was the anti-social Super Bowl. 2024 was the year of the anti-social Super Bowl, but still millions were spent on television advertising for the Super Bowl and conversations happened online. So let's jump in a little bit on the big takeaways we had from a social media perspective with this year's commercials. Taylor Glimpf, what did you take away from it as you were watching in between whatever else you and your friends were doing watching the game?
Besides singing every single song of halftime. One thing that stood out to me, two things that stood out to me is from a social standpoint. I completely agree with you. It was the antisocial Super Bowl. I was so sad actually. Like I was like, who wants to watch this? Like it went back. It felt very too early 2000s where no one watches the commercials at all and we're just kind of talking over them. And like, why is Temu still here? And then there was also, but what I think when I, for the purposes of this conversation, the Sarah V situation with Michael Sarah, I found that really interesting. The Super Bowl ad was a normal Super Bowl ad, in my opinion, but there had been some funny videos leading up to the Super Bowl on social. But so then when I looked into it, there was actually that idea came from Reddit threads. And I was like, how come you didn't tell us that? Like being able to say, like, or starting it with like all these Reddit moments and then saying, that gave us an idea to involve, like,
Right.
I was like, that was a huge missed opportunity to be able to say, we are listening to you, we hear you, and being able to then kind of like give an opportunity to have a collaborator post with Michael Sarah or something, like something that could have, it was just a large missed opportunity since the idea itself came from social.
So, Brandy, Taylor just said, why didn't this social integration happen? Why do you think social integrations just generally did not happen?
I want to piggyback on one thing that Taylor said first, as far as like missed opportunity, because I thought that Kawasaki had a missed opportunity with the mullets. Like, who even thinks of Kawasaki? Who has even said that's probably the first time I've said it in probably a decade? But I mean, they could have like trended by like making a call for action for people to show them their mullets. And
Absolutely.
and they had opportunities to be able to respond with this vehicle, recreational vehicle that they were publicizing. But I think it hunkered back to, like Taylor said, almost pre social, and in some ways it was like the .com era when we had the times when everyone was putting up a .com. I was very confused by We Believe in Ghosts, and they kept putting We Believe in Ghosts.com. And I wonder if it has something to do with the whole cookie thing that we're experiencing and people trying to collect first party data, and they're trying to drive people to their websites versus to social media channels. That was one conspiracy theory I came up with. I also noticed this morning that TurboTax, they never put a hashtag up, but they had a promoted tweet on X. Do we still say promoted tweets?
There's
What
still,
else are you going to
there's
call
still
it? A promoted X? I mean,
Promoted X on X, but they had a promoted tweet that had a hashtag in it. And I was like, but your ad didn't have a hashtag. So
yeah.
I just don't know if we're in an era where people aren't sure how to do social integrations with their traditional marketing, or if people are forgetting about it, or if they're trying to collect first party data by driving people to websites. It seems like it's a little bit of a hodgepodge.
I think
Yeah.
oh, just if I can jump in really quickly, I think what's also interesting is there are things like those, like if you post a comment, you can get the DM. So it's like, I think maybe there's a lack of understanding of what social has to offer because even if your goal is still website traffic, there actually are ways to do that through social that's probably going to be more effective than whatever.com or even QR codes because Apple Music Super Bowl thing and said get 3 months free. And me and all my friends were like, for us too, like well, if we already have Apple Music and it took us a second to even be like, do we want to do this? Do we want to do this? And then somebody pulled out their phone and it was gone. And then like, and then because we didn't actually care about the game, my friend went back and gave her the QR code. But I was like, but if we had or she didn't have DVR, which is not a thing in streaming television, but that's beside the point. We would have missed it, but there would have been a much easier way to go to social and write 3, and you'll get your 3 months free type thing.
I had a theory that one of the reasons we didn't see integrations is because Twitter is essentially dead. And Twitter was the real-time conversation platform.
Yeah.
And Instagram's not good at that. Facebook's not good at that. Threads is not really a thing yet, and not particularly good at it.
It's tried.
And if you want to try and do Instagram or TikTok, well, now somebody has to upload something. Like Twitter, you can just write something. And so there isn't really a place for social integrations right now like there was before Elon Musk destroyed Twitter. Is one of the thoughts I had.
It's a very good thought. I mean, so during the halftime show, there were lots of commentary about the lack of vocal prowess in the once great Alicia Keys. But like there were lots of Threads posts starting to come out where people that's where they went to post their text moments. And I didn't pick up tremendously, but I had the same thought, Jim, while I was watching. I was like, I'd only use Twitter during big live events.
Yeah.
Like as a consumer in general, and I kind of missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing too with like some of the dance moves Usher was doing. I thought, oh, this could be a good meme, but then I was like, people don't really use memes on TikTok or Instagram that much. It was really only Twitter that those would get turned into. So all these conversations that would come from these memeable moments during the Super Bowl probably won't happen anymore because of that integration.
And Sarah T., what brands did do well in terms of driving online conversation?
Yeah, so I think, all of this is definitely on point, but I want to say, there were some brands that found the workaround, and one of them was definitely Dove. First, let's talk about their commercial. Starts off very lighthearted, showing girls getting knocked down, getting up again, smiles, the music, very uplifting and everything like that. Then they cut it and they go to something serious, talking about how the age 14 is typically the drop-off point. But what viewers didn't really know, but they shared on their social, is that 45%, that's the leading reason why girls are dropping out. It's because they have low body confidence. So this campaign, they actually co-collabed with Nike, and there might be some small, subtle movements that we see in that. But they're able to now actually post a link directed on their Instagram for coaches to start utilizing a guide to help these younger girls feel more confident about their bodies. So that way they're not dropping, but they're staying and they're playing the game and not worried about something where, sadly, social media has clouded how women should look and be and all these things. Not saying it doesn't apply to other areas, but this was such a good on-point campaign from Dove. We haven't seen them in a really long time in this space. They came out and they made just a huge impact. Absolutely loved what they did with that.
They were the first commercial. I tracked maybe 60 some commercials, and they were the first one to use a hashtag. And the only other two that I saw that used a hashtag, I could have missed some, was Stand Up to Jewish Hate had a hashtag in it, and Poppy with Soda Is Back had a hashtag in it. But I also thought that largely, other than Dove, the brands played it super safe this year. There were no big stands on social issues. It was all very safe. Let's throw a bunch of celebs at this. Let's try and make a joke or two. And as a result, I'm not really sure if any brands changed minds or even introduced themselves, with the potential exception of what I've always called Temu, but apparently I'm supposed to call Temu, or Temu or something. I don't know.
It was in the song, and it was they had 4 commercials, and you still didn't get it right.
Right. And when you count the pregame and the postgame, they ran 6 ads, and they were the #1 mentioned brand on social media according to Brandwatch. But Verizon was right behind them with 1 ad because they had Beyonce, she dropped music, and Verizon got the mentions as much as a brand that I would venture most people had not heard of and were curious, who's this brand that has enough money to buy all these Super Bowl commercials. So Verizon, I think, really, they didn't break the internet. The point of the commercial, but they seem to really get people talking.
I think Verizon stood out, even without Beyonce, the concept of the ad stood out as opposed to just throwing a bunch of random celebrities in an ad. Like the Dunkin' ad, I got lost. I stopped paying attention to it. I didn't even know what they were talking about, what they were trying to accomplish. But I think the tie-in with Verizon's, brand of having the strongest network and, service not going out, combined with Beyonce trying to break the internet, it was the strongest concept by far. And they executed it very well, despite having Beyonce, in it. They didn't need her to, obviously the commercial was about her, but it didn't feel like they needed her to push that narrative to make their ad successful.
I think that's why it performed so well, because it was a strong concept without Beyonce. But with Beyonce, all of the Beyonce fans then push it even crazier. Because even in our room, we were like, oh, we were all watching, etc. But then the minute Beyonce got shown, the one like major Beyonce fan was like, no, everybody shush! Like, my queen is on the screen type thing. And so it took a concept that was already great and then elevated it even further.
And it's funny, Beyonce got mentioned 75,000 times. Taylor Swift got mentioned twice that. And she paid nothing. But yeah, and Travis Kelce was the third most mentioned celebrity, but he wasn't in an ad either. But after Beyonce, you drop way down to a tenth of that was people mentioning Carl Weathers. And then it falls off to dramatically again to Michael Cera, a few mentions of Christopher Walken, and even fewer mentions of Aubrey Plaza. So, people didn't generally take out their phone unless you gave them a reason, which was the sentimentality with Carl Weathers' death, and Beyonce with, new music, as of course from Queen Bee is always something to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
What other thoughts did we have before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think while social integration wasn't the forefront of the Super Bowl ads, I think social listening was. I think there were a few ads that I noticed that they paid attention to what people were saying. So obviously the Michael Cera, CeraVe one, Elf, Suits is making a huge comeback, and it's very talked about on TikTok. And so Elf used the actors from Suits to push that commercial. And then the same thing with Skechers. The Mandela effect is always a popular social media conversation, and so them bringing in Mr. T to say like there is no T in Skechers, that's a popular social media conversation, is Skechers and the Mandela effect with that. So I think social listening was pretty on point for a lot of these brands, even if they didn't follow up with social integration.
Thank you for bringing up Elf. I forgot about that, and that was one of the ones that I thought could have done a really great social integration. I'm sure there's tons of TikToks out there that they could have shown, or they could have made a call for people to create TikToks with the cosmetics. It was just a huge miss, and it just feels like to create a social integration doesn't cost you another $7 million like the ad placement. Like, it's something that could take you a very long way without having to cost you millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
The other huge miss, I thought, was Robert Kennedy for president. He cobbled together enough money to be an independent running for president. He played that retro Kennedy song. If you're going to interest people as a candidate, you need to get them to interest the next people. And social media can be built for that, and I think we learned that during the Obama's first campaign. And they just played this sappy music, and it ended at that point. So they're not gonna. He is not gonna get. I think getting a lift is a long shot anyway. But he's certainly not. He didn't mobilize an army of supporters with that $7 million he paid.
Right, and that both of your comments lead directly into my overall feedback. Is a Super Bowl ad is not cheap. Yeah. And so as a marketer, I don't understand how you calculate your ROI. because I mean I get it, lots of people are watching it, but are they? and
Right.
so and social is, like Brandy said, a free opportunity
Hmm.
to continue that conversation, to get, even if it's just to get new eyes for that moment. Not only do you then have the Nielsen now data, you now then have a platform's information of your social connection. And so to me it's just like, I don't understand how you spend that much money and don't do something else to get it off the TV.
Right.
I did think, though, the cost may have held people back, because when you're paying $7 million for 30 seconds, to say what to do on social is going to eat at least 5 of those seconds. And every second is so expensive that if you don't have a great confidence that people are really going to engage, it's probably one of the things that
That's true.
chops out.
Yeah.
It just felt like the ads were. It took a lot of effort, but they were all very underwhelming.
Hmm.
Yes.
It was so much effort, and then the bulk of those, and very underwhelming. I was still waiting for the big thing to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's what like, it was one of those Super Bowls where there wasn't a big thing. The
No,
big
yeah.
thing was the halftime show, and usually the halftime show leads to the big thing. Like,
Mhm.
there's somebody who has an album drop, or somebody typically wins the Super Bowl in the realm of advertising. And I think it was just a game with ads.
Yeah. The other thing that struck me is how many ads didn't even have a URL, and particularly the movie trailers just said trailer online. And I wondered a little bit of, have we reached a sort of more sophisticated audience that everybody knows how to find a movie trailer online, and if you don't, you're probably not going to the movies at this point. You're probably in a nursing home or something. But then the social stuff, like, we don't have to tell you to discuss this on social. If you're going to discuss it on social, you know how to do it. So I think there were some missed opportunities still, but I also wondered if the sophistication of the consumer let them, because we've been doing this internet thing for a couple of years, let them take some shortcuts.
That is, though, it makes me wonder. That's why it makes me wonder, like, should the standard be either, if it's not a URL, a hashtag? Because I think that's where a hashtag, even if you don't eat up seconds, to your earlier point,
Yeah.
it tells you where to get connected. Because once you start following that hashtag on any platform, since pretty much every platform has hashtags at this point, then you automatically are connected with that audience. So it's not, whatever your end frame is, you throw that hashtag in there and boom, people are like, oh, let me look up whatever.
Yeah. I wonder if brands also may think they already have engaged their viewers on social media, considering now all these commercials are kind of released before the Super Bowl. So like the Michael Cera V, like the most impressive part of that was the buildup, was these TikTokers going, oh my gosh, I'm spotting him in CVS signing these bottles. That was the cool part of that commercial, and then turning it into a commercial was just rounding it out. So the conversation is happening before the Super Bowl versus when these commercials would first come out. We would only see them during the Super Bowl and be like, oh my gosh, how cool is that? Let's go to the internet to talk about. And now we've already seen them, so it's not as exciting to go talk about it.
That's interesting. That
That is
maybe
interesting.
the timing is off. This conversation being post Super Bowl is actually supposed to be pre Super Bowl. Who are we expecting to see show up at the Super Bowl based on their activity prior
Yeah.
to?
Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about is, what are you guys' thoughts on the Snapchat ad with them trying to be the anti-social media?
Sarah T, do you have thoughts on that? You want to jump in? Because we've been stepping all over you this whole
Well,
conversation.
no, you're good. That Snapchat one, I may have missed, because at one point I did have to check in on some client work. However, so I can't speak to that. But one thing I did want to point out that Taylor Lee mentioned, with Bass Pro shops there, and how they kind of made that very bold statement: $5 a day you can own one of their tracker votes. Like that. I think that got a few people talking, because whoa, like $5 a day, just give off my Starbucks drink and I can own a boat and have some fun. But I did notice that they actually posted today on their Instagram, a few slider photos with that bold statement: $5 a day, trying to get people to get to their catalog to start looking at things and maybe really thinking about, do I finance a boat, here? And then also touting their rewards club and everything like that. So I thought it was interesting that they waited until the commercial aired and then dropped the info, where it's like you saw Budweiser, like there was a lot of clips going around to like things you could win, like little snippets, like from the beer tap to the old case, like they were posting that well before the commercial came on. So it was really interesting approaches from the brands all around. But go back to Snapchat, fill me in because I missed this.
Go ahead, Brandy. What are your thoughts on it?
So they ran an ad just showing how you can take pictures with Snap and the filters and share them with your friends. And it was showing like it started off showing likes and basically saying that likes don't matter. Just interact with your friends and take silly pictures. I forget what the line was, so obviously it wasn't that impactful, but it was something like, why be social when you can use Snapchat?
I mean, that is how people use Snapchat.
It is true.
It is true.
The other thing this morning when I first opened social, my first 2 posts were influencer posts about ads that were clearly paid partnerships. And so my first thought this morning was, oh, here it is. Here it is. And that's it. Like I went back and looked several times and then nothing else showed up. So I really thought they were going to have some legs to this that just aren't there. But with that, I think we've built this topic up as much as we can, and maybe we'll see a difference in 2024. Maybe social media will make a comeback to the big game, or maybe everything will cost $10 million for 30 seconds and the social media won't be a part of it. We'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, thank you, Brandy, Taylor, and Sarah. Until next time.